Hey guys, and welcome to Geeking with Gideros. Today we are going to set up Scene Manager and a couple of containers. Alright, so I've got Gideros Studio open here, and I've added a little bit of code as you see. I've commented it out. So last week we didn't really do a lot of coding. We were basically talking about scaling modes. So back to actual Gideros Studio today, and I'm just going to show you where we left off last time. So I've got the player open here already. Let's just click on it, and basically we've made a texture pack with this image on there, and we're displaying it in the corner. Now the image has an anchor point in the middle, and we're displaying this. It is 96 by 96 pixels wide and tall. And we're displaying it at 4848. That means that it is going to display it at exactly the corner flush against the sides, because that is halfway through the image, and this is 48. That would be 96 here, 48, and 96 here. Okay, so pretty simple there. Now what we need to do today is download a Scene Manager file. Now this Scene Manager file is made by one of the Gideros gurus. I'm just going to minimize the player here. So what you're going to need to do is visit this appcodingeasy.com website, and Artur Sosin, I think that is how you pronounce his name. He's pretty amazing. He wrote a Gideros book and everything. So if you want to check it out here, Gideros Mobile Game Development. Now, he's made a scene manager that people have been basically using for a while now, and it makes scene management in Gideros very easy. So the scene manager is, if you just want a short answer, at appcodingeasy.com gideros-mobile/manage-scenes-in-gideros-mobile. Okay, so that is the page you want to visit, and here is where you download. There's the page that shows you how to use Scene Manager for one, and all the different transitions and things, which we're going to get into later. But it also gives you a link to the GitHub page. Okay, so the GitHub page for Scene Manager is github.com/gideros/scene-manager. Okay, now I've already downloaded Scene Manager, and all you have to do is unzip it and copy the scene manager.lua file and paste it inside your project folder. Okay, so for us that's called the imposter, if you've been following the previous tutorials. So all you do is unzip the file and copy the scene manager Lua. This is all the files that will be in the zip, and this is the one you want to copy and paste it into our project folder. Now once you're inside Gideros, you will want to go files and add existing files, and you will want to select that scene manager Lua file and open it and add it, and it's going to add it here. Okay, now that is all you need to do in order to include it in your project. So now we want to leave our pack right here. Okay, now one thing we want to do is change local pack to just pack and make it a global, because if we leave it as pack, a local pack, then it's going to be local to this file, which is the main.lua file. But with Scene Manager, we are actually going to be using many Lua files. So for example, main Lua file will be for setup, then menu, then level 1, level 2, and so on. Okay, so we're going to have many different files. So if you have one texture pack that you want to use between the levels, you just want to make it a global, and that way you can use it in any of the levels at any time. So this will ensure it's available to all the files. So we're going to comment out local this part here, because we're not going to display this image in the main anymore. So I'm just going to comment this out for now. And we're going to uncomment this new code that I've added. Okay, and I'm going to explain what it does. Okay, let's save this. Now, we've got, as I said, the pack. We've done that before. Now it is a global available to all the files that we're going to create. Here we are setting up the Scene Manager. So basically what we're doing is saying Scene Manager, and as you see, I'm using a small s, and a big S over here. So that is a good way to name your stuff. As you see, it is a convention, okay? So we're gonna have like a little menu, almost like a tag, a name, and then a big one that is going to be, this is a new file we're creating, by the way, a new scene, all right? So as you see, we're referring it to as menu with a small m over here, and we're changing to that. But the actual file, the scene, is going to have a large M, okay? So as you see, the Gideros class is going to have a large M, but the file itself, see there, is going to have a small m. So it is going to load up this file with a small m, but the class itself is going to have a large M. So this is a really, really good way to manage changing between scenes and keeping consistent names, but also not getting confused. Always name your files with small and name your classes with large M. That's what I've been doing, and it's been working really well. So again, just as a reminder, your files will have small letters, okay? And the classes those files hold for the scene manager, okay? You do the same, but you just do a capital, okay? And as you see, this is our class that we created. I'm going to talk about that soon. So basically, scene manager.new, and in here we're setting up one single new scene. We can add a few more afterwards, and they can be like level 1, level 2, as many as you want, all right? Now we're adding this to the stage, just like we added the bitmap before. So stage add child scene manager. So we're adding the scene manager to the stage because, as you see, it's a sprite class, and we're going scene manager, change scene, and we're going to menu. So now it's going to load the menu scene, okay, straight off. So this is your setup, your main.lua, and it is going to go straight into the menu scene after executing all this code. Now, here is the code for the scene. So as you see, I've created a new file here, and for that you will go right click, add new file, and you're going to call it menu.lua with again a small m. Inside that file we're going to create a scene by saying menu with a large M, capital M, and go Gideros.class sprite, and the function initialize function, okay, this is when the scene boots up, is going to have some basic stuff. Here we are now going to create a container. So see how here we created over here, where did I have it? So local BFP bitmap.new from our texture pack. Here we're going to go self stage container equals sprite.new. Now self.stage container means that this is going to be local, only to be used within this scene, okay? Now we could say local, and it would also only be used in this scene, but it would also only mean that local is only available to this function. And as I told you guys, this is the initialize function. This happens when the scene gets booted up. You can also have an onEnterFrame function that gets run at every frame. And if you want to, so that function will be over here. If you want those functions to communicate, then a local variable in one function is not going to be accessible in another. So calling it something like self.stageContainer instead of local stage container is going to ensure that you can now access it from the other scene, the other function as well. It's going to be available to all the functions, okay? So here we are going self.stageContainer equals sprite.new. This is basically creating an empty sprite for us to place our graphics into. This is a really good idea, itchy eyes. This is a really good idea. Okay, I need a drink. I've been talking for way too long. All right. So creating an empty container is a really good idea because it allows you to then move all that stuff inside that container as one. So think of it like a little stage, like a little box that you can pick up and move somewhere else. So let's say you want to shake the screen, okay? If you put everything into a container as an empty sprite, so let's say you've got a background, foreground, character sprites, etc., and you want to do a screen shake, you can shake all of that stuff at once, okay? And you can have multiple containers. So you can have a container on top that is like, for example, your GUI, you know, your little buttons and things like that, and you want those to stay in place, so you never move those. And let's say you could call it UI, user interface or something, and that's your container. That container stays perfectly still, while your, let's say, stage container or your level container, you can shake it and they can move independently. So all your backgrounds, your sprites, all that stuff will shake and move or scroll, whatever, and your UI container will stay perfectly still. So it is a really good idea to use containers, in my opinion. I don't just put stuff on the stage, but put it all inside a container. That way you've got it all held together nicely and you can do things with it. Right, so that is your empty container right there. We've added it to the stage, as you see, self.addChild. So we're by saying self.addChild, we're adding it to the scene, okay? Now, self.bmp, we're basically doing what we've done over here, local.bmp. But see here, it was local to the file. Now we're making it local to all the functions inside this scene. So again, this is a really good way to ensure that you can access it through different functions. You might not always need to, but pretty much for me, it's common practice just to use self dot whatever the name is of the sprite or the variable that you're using, because that way you know you can access it through other functions and you never get stuck. If you use local, it will mean that it's only going to be tied to, like, let's say this initialize init function. Okay, so self.bmp, here we're setting up the ball again, position, we're putting it now in the center of the screen. And remember, our screen is 320 by 480 as a base, and obviously, you know, it scales up, multi-resolution assets, all that sort of stuff we talked about. So it basically should show up, the red ball should show up exactly in the middle of the screen. Now over here you see self.stageContainer addChild self.bmp. So we are adding the bitmap file into the empty stage container. That stage container is already on the stage because we've self.addChild. Sorry, not self.addChild. This is a common mistake you can make, so just be careful of that. Say self:\addChild. I've run into this problem a lot of the time. A lot of my syntax errors, a lot of my problems had to do with the fact that I was using a dot instead of a colon. Okay, it's a simple mistake to make, so just make sure that you use the colon when you go self:\addChild. Okay, if you're referring to self.stageContainer, okay, that's different. Here, as you add the child, you make sure you have the colon. All right, so remember this, it's quite an important one because you will run into problems. So when you're doing like when you're setting up a sprite, you go self.stageContainer, okay, and then as you're adding it to the scene, you use the colon. Okay, so just make sure you do that, otherwise it will not work. If you run into trouble, just go over the code and just make sure all your stuff is correct. It's really, really easy once you've been doing it for a while. Once you've you know, done it a few times, you will start. It's going to be embedded. You guys will not have any problems with getting it set up. Just sometimes it gets a little bit confusing with the syntax and, you know, making sure you're getting the right bits and pieces. All right, so this is pretty simple. Let's just run it. I'm going to open up the player, and as you see, right smack in the middle. So this was a really basic explanation on how to set up scenes or scene manager and how to create a new file for the scene manager to go to. Now, this is going to be used. Okay, let's just take all this out because we won't need it anymore. Now, main.lua is now going to be used as your setup, and we're going to load up some of the stuff we're going to use in our game. And then we're going to have our menu that is going to display menu bits and pieces. So for example, this red ball will eventually be a button that will go into level 1. So here it's going to say something like the imposter, whatever info you might want to display, and play button. And you're going to click on the play button and it's going to take you to level 1. And Scene Manager makes this really easy by including transitions. You can transition from one level to another. Some of the transitions are really good. I found the fade one didn't work for me because it's a little bit hard to get into now, but to summarize it, if you're using containers and you're using sprites with lots of body parts, it doesn't it doesn't fade everything out. It instead uses alpha. And so let's say you've got one body part on top of another, and as the alpha channel, which means transparency, goes down towards 0, you can see one sprite through another. Okay, so it's not a traditional fade. It doesn't black out. It instead changes the transparency of the sprites. So when I need to use a fade to black, fade out from black, fade in, fade out, then I normally create my own. But otherwise, Scene Manager has some amazing things like roll in, roll out, slide in, slide out. It's got all these different modes, transitions that you can use to transition to new scenes. It's actually a lot of fun to use. So again, this is a really basic explanation on how to use Scene Manager and how to set up a basic container to hold your level bits and pieces. Now, as I said before, you can have many containers in your scene, and normally what I do is I have the way that I normally set things up is I have a BG container. So self.bg is background, self.mg is middle ground, self.fg is foreground. Then I have also a self.ui, any UI bits and pieces, and then I do self.gm or self.tv for the initials of my name, or a TV box, either one. I just like these little 2-letter shortcuts because they make things very easy to read and you know exactly straight away what it is. That holds all of the other containers. So I put all the 4 containers into my TV container, and that way I can move the TV container as one, but I can also move the other containers, foreground, background, middle ground, UI, independently. Okay, so that's a really good way of setting up your stuff. I like doing things, it gives me this way, it gives me flexibility, and it just works well for me. Okay, so again, pretty basic session today, guys. Make sure you get the Scene Manager plugin, Lua. What is it called? The Scene Manager class, because it will make things a hell of a lot easier for you to manage. Okay, if you're gonna try and do this yourselves, it's gonna be a lot more work. So why do that extra work if you don't have to? This has been around for a while. It is brilliant and it has been proven to work well. So make sure that you get this class and give it a go. It is much easier to use than I might have made it look. But hopefully you did get something out of this. Okay, thank you guys, and I will see you again next time.